The call ended with a flat tone that seemed to echo through the quiet kitchen. "Mom, figure it out." "Not my problem," my daughter had said before hanging up. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the reflection of my own face in the dark screen, lined, tired, but not broken. On the table beside me, an envelope rested under the morning light. Inside it was a lottery ticket worth more money than I could ever spend. $333 million. I laughed, softly at first, then louder until the sound startled even me. Not because I was happy, but because the universe had a cruel sense of humor. My children had just failed the easiest test of their lives, and they didn't even know they were being tested. Outside, a weak Ohio sun struggled to push through gray clouds. The neighborhood was waking up, lawn mowers starting, dogs barking, someone's radio humming an old country song. To anyone else, this was just another Tuesday. For me, it was the day I stopped pretending that love alone could hold a family together. My name is Sandra Williams, 67, retired waitress, widow of 31 years. I have 2 adult children, Derek, a bank manager who likes to give lectures about financial discipline, and Ashley, a woman who believes struggle is for people without manicures. Between the two of them, I've learned that raising kids doesn't always mean they grow up kind. It hadn't always been this way. I used to think we were a normal family. Dinners at the table, birthdays with store-bought cakes, Sunday mornings at church. But time wears people down. Grief reshapes them. After my husband died, I worked double shifts and took overtime whenever I could, just to keep the lights on. I never complained, never asked for anything. Maybe that was my mistake, I made sacrifice look too easy. When the winning numbers came on TV 3 weeks ago, I almost didn't notice. They were the same ones I'd been playing for 15 years, my husband's birthday, our anniversary, my grandson Jake's birth date. Numbers that meant something. When I saw them match, one after another, my hands shook so badly I dropped my coffee. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the ticket on the fridge, thinking it had to be some cosmic prank. But it wasn't. That night, I didn't sleep. I thought about everything I could do with the money, buy a better house, travel, maybe finally stop worrying. But mostly, I thought about my children. How they'd reacted last Christmas when I brought store-bought gifts instead of expensive ones. The way Ashley had joked about finally getting something worthwhile when I was gone. The way Derek had suggested I downsize because this old place is too much for one person. The next morning, I made a choice. Before I told anyone, I'd find out who deserved to know. Not who deserved the money, who deserved my trust. I called a lawyer. Then a financial planner. Then another lawyer. I didn't tell them what I was planning, not yet. But I set everything in motion quietly, like someone arranging dominoes. All I needed was one small push. So today, I made that call to Ashley. I told her I was short on money for my heart medication and could use a little help until my next check came in. She laughed, a short, impatient sound, and told me to stop playing the victim. Then she hung up. I sat there for a long time, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, the world outside still turning. My tea had gone cold. The lottery ticket was still on the table beside me, untouched. I thought of Jake, sweet, thoughtful Jake, the only one who still called just to ask how I was doing. I smiled, finally setting the phone down. The test had only just begun. By Thursday morning, I'd already rehearsed the conversation a dozen times. I knew exactly what I would say, how I would sound, even when I'd let my voice tremble just enough to seem fragile. Derek had always respected confidence but responded to weakness like a man reading from a policy manual. Sympathy was never his strong suit. When he picked up, I almost lost my nerve. "Mom, what's wrong?" His tone was brisk, businesslike, as if I were a client interrupting a meeting. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important," I said. "My heart medication's gone up again. I just need a little help until my check clears." There was a pause. I could hear the clicking of his keyboard, the muffled chatter of the bank in the background. "Mom, we've talked about this. You need to budget better." It's not healthy for you to depend on others every time something comes up. I'm not asking for much, I said quietly. Just a little. He sighed, the kind of sigh that carries judgment. Ashley and I are worried about you. You're living in that old house by yourself, buying things you don't need. Have you thought about one of those assisted living communities? They handle medication, meals, everything. There it was again, that subtle push to tuck me away somewhere tidy and out of sight. Let me think about it, I said, though I already knew the answer. I'll send you a brochure, he said. And, Mom, don't call Ashley about money again. She's got enough on her plate. When the line went dead, I sat there staring at the quiet phone, realizing how easy it had become for both of my children to hang up on me. Outside, wind rattled the oak branches against my window. I pressed my hand over my chest, not from pain but from something heavier, a mixture of sadness and resolve. The plan that had started as curiosity was beginning to feel like a moral obligation. For the next few days, I stayed busy. I met with my lawyer again, a patient woman named Evelyn who spoke in careful sentences. We went over trusts, clauses, contingency plans. You're very thorough, she said. I've had a lifetime to learn from mistakes, I replied. At night, I sat at the kitchen table with old photo albums spread out before me. Derek with his first bike. Ashley in her graduation cap. Both smiling, both surrounded by a younger version of me, tired, hopeful, still believing love could fix anything. The photos didn't lie, but they didn't tell the whole truth either. Somewhere along the years, affection had turned into entitlement. Gratitude had been replaced by expectation. On Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. It was Jake. He stood there in a hoodie, holding a paper bag that smelled like coffee and donuts. Hey, Grandma, he said with that unshakable grin. Thought you could use some caffeine. I laughed before I could stop myself. What brings you here? Mom said you sounded upset on the phone the other day. Just wanted to check on you. I felt my throat tighten. That's kind of you, honey. We sat at the kitchen table where his mother and uncle once fought over pancakes. Jake told me about school, his part-time job at the bookstore, how he was saving up for a used car. He listened when I talked, really listened, and it struck me how rare that had become. At one point, he looked at me and said, Grandma, you okay? You seem different. I'm fine, I said, smiling. Just thinking about what people value most. He shrugged. I think it depends on what they're scared to lose. That night, after he left, I stood by the window watching his taillights fade down the street. My kitchen was quiet again, but not lonely. I picked up the lottery ticket from the refrigerator and turned it over in my hand. The world would soon know that I wasn't the one who needed saving. 2 weeks later, the letter came. A thick envelope, cream-colored with a gold seal from the state lottery office. I had almost forgotten I was waiting for it. My heart stuttered as I sliced it open and read the words that confirmed it all, claim approved. Funds released. I sat perfectly still for a long time, the paper trembling slightly in my hands. There it was, in black ink, an official number so large it didn't look real. $333 million. It felt absurd. The kind of number people used in stories to make a point about greed or luck or divine irony. I thought of my husband, Charles, and the promise we made at our kitchen table years ago, that if life ever gave us more than we needed, we'd make sure it mattered. He'd been gone 12 years, and yet in that moment, I could almost hear his laugh. Well, Sandy, he'd say, guess it's your turn to shake things up. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and made another call, this time, not to my children, but to the bank. I'd like to schedule a meeting, I said. I'm considering a few investments. Derek's voice came through the other end, polite but weary. Mom, this really isn't something we should discuss over the phone. I'm not discussing, I interrupted softly. I'm informing. The silence that followed was delicious. He finally said, all right. Tomorrow at 10. I'll make time. When I walked into his office the next morning, heads turned. I wasn't wearing anything flashy, just my gray coat and the same worn purse I'd had for years, but I carried myself differently. Calm. Purposeful. Derek looked surprised to see me in person. "Mom, you could have told me you were coming," he said, gesturing toward a chair. "I thought I'd surprise you." I handed him a folder. Inside were documents, account transfers, legal authorizations, all properly notarized. Evelyn had made sure of it. He flipped through the pages, frowning. "What is all this?" "My new accounts," I said. "I'll need a private banker to manage them. Preferably one who can keep confidence." He laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Mom, where on earth did you get this kind of money?" "From the earth, apparently. And a little luck." For a moment, he looked at me as if he didn't recognize me. Then his expression changed, curiosity flickered into something sharper. Greed always reveals itself in the eyes first. "Mom," he said, his tone softening, "that's incredible. I'm proud of you." "Really? Are you?" I asked, studying him. "Or are you just recalculating what I'm worth now?" He blinked, startled. I stood, gathering my coat. "Don't worry, Derek. This isn't a test. That part's over." I left him staring at the papers, speechless. By the time I got home, I knew what I had to do. I called Ashley next. Her reaction was almost identical, shock, then disbelief, then the kind of enthusiasm that always has a price tag attached. "Mom, this is amazing," she said. "You have to let me help. We'll manage it together." "Manage?" I repeated, my voice calm. "Ashley, the last thing I need is someone managing me." That night, I sat on the porch, watching the sky fade into pink and gold. The quiet had weight to it, almost like peace. But underneath it was something else, a decision pressing at the edge of my conscience. I had tested my family and found the truth. But knowing the truth isn't the same as accepting it. As the first stars appeared, I opened my notebook and began to write notes, instructions, a plan that would reshape everything they thought they understood about me. By the time I put my pen down, I knew exactly what I was going to do with every cent. And it wouldn't be what anyone expected. I didn't tell them what I planned next. Not Derek, not Ashley, not even Jake. Some truths work best when they arrive unannounced. Over the next few weeks, my life became a careful performance. I went through my routines as though nothing had changed: grocery runs, church on Sundays, coffee with the same neighbors who still thought I was a woman living on pension checks. I smiled when people talked about bills and gas prices, though inside, I carried a secret that could buy the whole street twice over. At night, though, I didn't sleep much. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it turn in lazy circles while my mind raced. The money wasn't what weighed on me. It was what to do with it. I'd always believed people showed their true selves in times of struggle. But now, I was starting to wonder, would I be any better than my children if I used this fortune to punish them? Then one morning, Evelyn called. "Everything's finalized," she said. "The trusts are set, and the disbursement plan is ready for your approval." "Thank you," I told her. "There's just one more thing I want to add." That one more thing would change everything. The following weekend, I invited everyone to dinner. I made it sound simple, like an attempt at family bonding. "No excuses this time," I told them. "I've got news I'd like to share in person." Derek hesitated, as usual. "Is this about the money, Mom?" I let a small smile creep into my voice. "You'll see." They all came. Derek arrived first, his tie loosened, carrying a bottle of wine he probably grabbed from the clearance shelf. Ashley followed, perfume first, her heels clicking across my hardwood floors like gunfire. Jake came last, holding a bunch of grocery store daisies. "These are for you, Grandma," he said, grinning. "Perfect," I whispered. "Just perfect." Dinner started polite enough. Ashley complimented the roast. Derek asked about my health. Jake chatted about school. But underneath it all, tension simmered like a storm waiting for the first crack of thunder. When everyone's plates were half empty, I leaned back in my chair. You know, I began, when I called you both a few weeks ago, I was scared. Ashley's fork paused midair. Derek looked up from his glass. I thought my heart might give out. I didn't have money for my medication. I just wanted to see if my children could help me. Ashley gave a nervous laugh. Mom, we talked about this. No, I said, quiet but sharp enough to cut her words in half. You didn't talk. You dismissed. Both of you did. The air thickened. Jake frowned, glancing between us. What's going on? I reached into my purse and laid the folded lottery letter on the table. That's what's going on. Ashley blinked. Derek's wine glass froze midair. I won $333 million, I said. And I didn't tell you. Because I wanted to see who you were without it. Ashley's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Derek set his glass down too hard, the stem cracking. Mom, he said slowly, this isn't funny. It's not meant to be. Jake's eyes widened. Wait, you actually, Grandma, that's real? I nodded. As real as it gets. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Ashley started to cry, soft at first, then louder. I didn't mean what I said, Mom. I was just stressed. You know how life gets. I watched her carefully. Her tears were polished, almost practiced. Derek stayed quiet, thinking, calculating. Funny thing about money, I said. It doesn't change people. It just shows you who they already are. The room felt smaller, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Jake reached for my hand. Grandma, he said softly, you don't owe anyone an explanation. I smiled at him, but my voice shook when I spoke. Maybe not. But I owe them the truth. And as I looked at my children, their faces a blend of fear, greed, and disbelief, I knew the real storm hadn't even started yet. For a long moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock above the mantel, counting down the seconds like a judge waiting for a verdict. Derek's jaw tightened. Ashley dabbed at her tears with the corner of a napkin, mascara smudging in dark streaks. 333 million, Derek finally said, his voice low. You really expect us to believe you just, what, kept that to yourself? I didn't just keep it, I said. I protected it. From exactly this. Ashley let out a shaky laugh. Mom, you don't mean that. We're your family. We're supposed to help each other. Help? I looked at her, and something in me went cold. When I needed help, you told me to figure it out. When I said I was scared, you hung up. The only person who showed up was Jake. Ashley turned toward her son, her voice sharpening. Jake, did you know about this? He shook his head. No. But maybe if you'd listened to her once in a while, you wouldn't be finding out like this. Derek slammed his hand on the table, the sound startling all of us. Enough. Mom, this is insane. You're letting emotions cloud your judgment. You need someone responsible to manage this money before it gets taken advantage of. Responsible? I asked softly. You mean you? He hesitated, realizing too late that the mask had slipped. I could see it all over his face, ambition wrapped in concern. I stood, my knee stiff but steady. I already decided how it'll be managed. The paperwork signed, notarized, and filed. The funds are in a trust. Jake will oversee it. The silence that followed felt like gravity. Ashley blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying Jake's the only one who remembered what love looks like without a price tag. Derek's face flushed. You can't be serious. He's a kid. He doesn't know the first thing about money. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice until it carried weight. Neither did I, once. But I learned. And unlike you, Derek, he'll learn without arrogance. Ashley pushed her chair back. You can't just cut us out. We're your children. You stopped being my children the moment you treated me like a burden, I said quietly. Blood doesn't make loyalty. Choices do. She stared at me as if I'd struck her. So this is your revenge? No, I said. This is the truth catching up. Jake tried to speak, but I lifted a hand. You don't need to defend me, sweetheart. I took out 2 envelopes from my purse and set them on the table. These are yours, I told Derek and Ashley. They contain exactly what you've earned. Ashley snatched hers, tearing it open. Inside was a single check, $5. She blinked, confusion turning to rage. What the hell is this? Enough to remind you what kindness costs when you forget it. Derek didn't open his. He just stared at it, jaw tight, eyes dark. You'll regret this, Mom. People will think you've lost your mind. I smiled, small and sad. Maybe I finally found it. Then I turned to Jake, whose face was pale and stunned. Everything I own, the house, the accounts, the trust, it's yours to manage when I'm gone. Use it to help people who need it. Not to punish, not to flaunt. To build something good. He looked like he might cry. Grandma, I don't deserve this. Exactly why you do. Ashley shoved her chair back so hard it scraped the floor. You've lost us, she said. No, I replied, my voice steady now. I've released you. She stormed out first, Derek right behind her. The door slammed, leaving the house vibrating in their absence. Jake sat across from me in silence. I reached across the table and took his hand. Sometimes, I said, the loudest kind of love is the one that lets go. Outside, the wind shifted, sweeping through the maple trees with a sound like relief. Inside, the clock kept ticking, but for the first time I felt no need to measure the minutes. Weeks passed, and the noise faded. Calls went unanswered, messages left unreturned. Derek and Ashley's outrage burned bright for a while, threats of lawyers, of setting things right, but the heat didn't last. It never does when the fire's built on pride. Eventually, the silence settled like dust over everything, soft and final. I didn't mind the quiet. It had a clean kind of honesty to it. Mornings became simple again, coffee on the porch, radio humming low, the smell of wet earth after rain. For the first time in years, my days belonged to me. No one was checking in with conditions or keeping score. I thought that kind of peace was only for the young or the rich, but it turned out to be for anyone willing to let go. Jake came by often. Not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. He'd mow the lawn, fix the creaky gate, bring me books he thought I'd like. One afternoon he found me in the garden, planting tulip bulbs for spring. You know, he said, kneeling beside me, you could hire someone to do this now. I could, I said, pressing another bulb into the soil. But they wouldn't know where to dig. He smiled. You're something else, Grandma. I hope so, I said. Sometimes he'd ask questions about the trust, about what he was supposed to do with all that money one day. I told him the truth. I didn't care if he built hospitals or planted forests, as long as he remembered that money is just a louder form of choice. It doesn't reveal who you are, it amplifies it. He nodded like he understood, though I think it would take him years to fully feel what that meant. Autumn arrived quietly, the kind that painted the trees gold and made the air taste like nostalgia. I spent long evenings writing letters, one to each of my children, though I doubted they'd ever read them. Not apologies, not justifications. Just words I needed to release. I told them I loved them still, but that love no longer excused their cruelty. I wished them peace, even if it meant I'd never see them again. I sealed the envelopes, tucked them into the safe with the rest of my papers, and felt lighter for it. One night, I dreamed of Charles. He was sitting at the old diner counter where we used to meet after my shifts, the smell of coffee and fried eggs in the air. You did it, Sandy, he said, smiling. You found your way through. When I woke, the house was bathed in soft morning light. For the first time in a long while, I felt something I couldn't quite name. Not triumph. Not sadness. Just peace. The kind that comes when you've stopped waiting for people to become who you hoped they'd be. Later that day, I went out to the porch with a cup of tea. Across the street, a young mother was struggling with her groceries while her toddler cried in the driveway. I stood, crossed over, and carried the bags to her door. She thanked me, flustered and grateful, and I smiled. We all need a little help sometimes, I said. That evening, Jake stopped by with dinner. He asked if I missed them, his mother, his uncle. I thought for a while before answering. I miss who they were before they forgot what mattered. But I don't miss who they became. He nodded, setting down the food. We ate in comfortable silence, the way families should when love doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. As the sun slipped behind the trees, the sky turned the color of old photographs. I reached for Jake's hand and squeezed it gently. When I'm gone, I said, don't remember the money. Remember this, the quiet, the honesty, the choice to stay kind even when it's hard. He promised he would. That night, the house felt lighter, as if it finally exhaled. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain and tulip roots sleeping beneath the soil, small, hidden things waiting for spring. And for the first time in a long life, I knew I'd planted something that would outlive me.